Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time I'm reviewing a fourth Doctor story. It's The Creature from the Pit. As always, I have in front of me the television companion for the classic TV stories, and here's a plot synopsis of this story. The Doctor and Romana receive a distress signal and arrive on Chloris, a lush and verdant world that has only small quantities of metals, all of which are controlled by its ruler, Lady Adrasta. Adrasta keeps order with the aid of a huntsman and his wolfweeds, mobile balls of vegetation, while a band of scruffy thieves, led by Torvin, organise raids on her palace to steal whatever metal they can. The Doctor identifies the distress signal source as a large eggshell-like structure in the forest. He is taken prisoner by Adrasta's guards, and, in order to escape, leaps into the pit, the entrance to a cave system in which all those who incur Adrasta's wrath are consigned to be devoured by an immense green, globular creature living within. The Doctor, with the aid of the elderly soothsayer Organon, discovers that the creature is not an unthinking killer, but an ambassador from the planet Tithonus, which has a lack of chlorophyll, but an abundance of metal. The Tithonians had hoped to trade with Chloris, but the first person their ambassador Errata encountered on arriving in his eggshell-like ship was Adrasta, who took his communicator device and trapped it in the pit so as to preserve her monopoly on metal. Errata receives his communicator and kills Adrasta. He then warns the Doctor that the Tithonians have set up a neutron star on a collision course with Chloris in retaliation for his imprisonment. With the Doctor's help, he is free from the pit and out in space spins an aluminium shell around the star, allowing for it to be pulled off course by the TARDIS's gravitational tractor beam and thus saving Chloris. So that is the plot synopsis for The Creature from the Pit. What about the story itself? It's an interesting plotline. It's a very basic sci-fi storytelling, but I think it's heightened by some of the characterizations and some of the actors in here. It's kind of like the Doctor's wife the time before. The writing's maybe not as good, but it's heightened by the actors. We'll go through some of the cast members very quickly and just go through that, and then I'll go into some of the bits that I like about this story, and bits I don't like, of course. You've got the Doctor, Tom Baker, height of his pomp, height in the middle of the Douglas Adams era. It's actually the first one recorded of what I understand, but I'll get into more production a bit later on in this review. But it's a fun discussion. This zany Doctor and his comments when he was talking about the eggshell to Adrasta near the beginning of the story, saying it's communicating, and then one of the scientists doesn't say that's true, he thinks it's wrong. And the Doctor makes the quip by saying, "Oh, I have a few gadgets that he maybe didn't have, like a teaspoon and an open mind," which I think is a lovely little quote, which is why it's used as title card here. So it's a brilliant little quips that he has all the way through. There's a few quips like that. The fact that he will act a little bit dumb at times. The bit where he's trying to get out the shackles when he's shackled up like this, and with guards, and his sneezing and knocking people out and things like that. It's definitely Tom Baker at his most comfortable, his most enjoyable, and it is the Doctor that everybody loves and has. And there's some stories with Tom Baker you think, is he going to be bothered with this one? This one, he definitely can be bothered, and you can see that. And it shows in the performance, and it just makes the whole story flow better because you've got the Doctor making his quips all the way through. There's elements of the comedy coming through from Douglas Adams' writing. A book jokes there again, like it was in Death and the Daleks, which I'll go into more detail later on. That works pretty well. His interplay with Organon is brilliant. I do like the way the Doctor works with Organon and the fact that he realises that Organon is a soothsayer and plays on that a little bit, and makes out that the whole cross computers joke that comes out is quite fun. The whole interplay he has with all the characters, and especially Romana. Even though this may be the first story that Lalla Ward and Tom Baker did together, there's already a spark and a chemistry there which really works and really does make a difference for this story. And I'm really pleased that relationship works so well from the off, and it wasn't forced or undeveloped at any point. It works quite well. Tom nails it in this one. I can't really dispute anything about his character. It works a treat. What also works a treat is Lalla Ward, although I'm not quite sure about the costume. I think because it's the first one, they thought, let's go the flowing gowns that Mary Tam had. She doesn't suit it. The style that she has afterwards, or the style she has in City of the Deaf, obviously there's reasons why people like that one, but the whole style and the fact that Lalla Ward wanted to work with June Hudson, the costume designer, to ensure that she got a style of her own, it works better for the personality. The personality Romana that we know of the second Romana is there from the off, The fact that she plays on the fact of her upperclassness and fools the rebels is quite cool. I like that statement. She is a little bit whiny at times with K9. She's kind of... I'm not sure whether she's playing up to it a little bit or whether she actually is still a bit whiny. I think that's the only bit I don't like of the characterization, is the fact that she can be a bit whiny, because that's not the Romana you know from the other stories. It's a bit odd, the way the characterization works there for that bit when K9 gets overwhelmed by the wolf weeds, and when K9 effectively nearly depletes his power and he's trying to free stuff later on. Romana's played brilliantly by Lala Wood here. She seems to have nailed it more or less from the off. It's just a couple of characterization points that may be a little bit iffy. You then got K9, voiced by David Brierley. He's not John Leeson. He works, but he's not John Leeson, and it's a shame that they had that argument, that situation where John Leeson wouldn't come back for season 17. It works better with John Leeson as K9. I mean, it's fair enough, but he makes K9 seem a bit more pompous than he actually is. He sounds more pompous. I mean, obviously, he's pompous with and there's lots of quips with John Leeson, but for some reason, David Brierley makes him seem more pompous than he actually is. He's an intelligent computer. The sass doesn't quite work with K9 with the characterization here. I mean, it's solid enough, but it's not a patch on John Leeson's K9, and I can understand maybe why K9 isn't used as much in this season, because it doesn't work as well for me, I think. You then got the guest cast. You've got Corella, played by Aileen Way, who was the old woman in Unearthly Child, which I've already reviewed. So this is her last appearance in Doctor Who. And this curmudgeonly old woman who's set in her ways and a bit power hungry, but is kind of a lackey to Adrasta. It's a great little role, very, very kooky, very... I won't say creepy, but unsettling at times, the way she goes about her business. Yeah, it's a great turn from Aileen Way. You then got the rebels. You've got Torvin, played by John Bryans. He's kind of like a wheeler-dealer sort of idea, with his love of metal and the fact he's trying to get his own way and he thinks the metal is his and all that conversation. I think that's quite fun. I quite like that. Overall, it's a decent part, decent role. I love the fact John Bryans plays on this kind of slight stupidity that Torvin has, this single-mindedness he has. I like the way that's worked. You then got Edu, played by Edward Kelsey. Edward Kelsey at this point is starting to make his name in the Archers as, what's his name? Grundy. The old Grundy. Can't remember his name now. Is it Ed Grundy? I can't remember. It's the old one anyway. It's the old Grundy in the Archers. He's starting to do the voice for that at that point. He's known in my circles as Colonel K, Danger Mouse. He's just a kind of strongman lackey in this one. It doesn't quite work for the characterization of the story, but it's a decent enough turn, really. You've then got Anu, played by Tim Munro, who's effectively the second to Torvin, and is the one who's trying to get the power off Torvin, which works and then doesn't. It's a bit flaky. It's not the strongest support, and that's the thing with David Fisher's writing. Sometimes his secondary characters can be a little bit iffy, and this is certainly one of the options here. You've got the Huntsman, played by David Telfer, who is very much the big lackey of Adrasta. There's not much to him. It's played well enough. So you've then got Tolan, played by Maurice Barry. Is that Maurice Barry, the director from the 60s? Or is that a different person? Is that a different actor with the same name? It's an interesting situation. Who's the scientist? And then you've got Doran, played by Terry Walsh, who does get chucked down the pit. Understandable, because Terry Walsh is a stuntman. And nice little, small credited part for Terry Walsh. Kind of a reward for all the stunt work he's done over the past few years. You've then got the two standout guest cast members. You've got Adrasta, played by Myra Francis, who is utterly evil, utterly selfish. I love the way she flips in regards to her fear of Aratu and the creature, as she calls it most of the time. You can tell she's doing it for her own end. You can tell she's trying to keep control. She's kind of a megalomaniac idea. I do like the way that it's played by Myra Francis, and it's really fun. Some of the elements I do like is the fact that she seems to instill fear with people because of her broad, harsh personality. There's not a bone of goodness in her, so it's kind of like you cheer when she gets killed by Ratu at the end. But yeah, it's a great little play. And then we have Jeffrey Belden, who's playing an old man, which he liked to do. He's kind of like Clive Dunn in Dad's Army. He likes playing old characters. Jeffrey Belden, of course, is best known for playing Catweasel in the early 70s. But he plays Organon quite fun. I love this kind of doddery old man feeling that is played by Belden. I do like it. I think it's quite well played. he is probably the standout guest cast member, and he doesn't show up until episode 2. So it's kind of like he's like the stooge to the Doctor through most of the scenes down in the caves. I do like the character. I do like the whole interplay he has here. The fact that he said something wrong and Adrasta threw him down the pit, and it just shows her whole character through him about how feared and how twisted she can actually be. So it's one of the better guest roles here. I mean, Myra Francis plays it brilliantly, and so does Jeffrey Belden. They both play a very good turn here. In regards to the direction of the story, Christopher Barry possibly is his last story he directs. It's not a bad send-off, to be fair. I love some of the angles you have in the pit, where it's low. It's from the actors looking down. It's a very low shot, and I love some of the high shots as well. There's 2 instances of people being thrown down the pit. The first one's very simple, standard, kind of inline shot, standard 2 or 3 person scenes with a little bit of low down to establish the whole thing at the beginning when the person's thrown down the pit initially. And then you've got the whole idea of the second time the pit's done, when the Doctor is there to see Doran being thrown down the pit, and the different angles that are used. There's a high up angle used at one point, and there's a low down angle. And I do like the way the contrast is done there. I think it's all done in Elstree. I don't think there's anything outside. It's all done in Elstree, which is interesting in itself, because it's all filmed, so it must be done in Elstree. And the whole direction there is actually quite good. So I like that part of the direction from Christopher Barry. There's other elements. The studio stuff is very multi-camera setup. There is a lovely shot when Romana and Adrasta are first talking once the Doctor's thrown himself down the pit and Romana's prisoner, and Adrasta brings out a mirror and she starts preening herself, and it's a wide two shot of the two of them from one direction, and then when you cut to Romana, you see Adrasta's reflection in the mirror as that conversation. That's an interesting shot choice. It kind of gives a more of an air of power that Adrasta has over people in this planet on Chloris, and it's an interesting way of dealing with it, and I like it for that. I think it works. The direction overall is pretty solid from Christopher Barry. It's not his best. People say the Daemons is his best. Good bits I do like though with this. The Wolfweed's a nice little idea. Basically, they're just servo motors rolling about with kind of sort of foam round them painted green, but they're a nice little concept. They do tend to work quite well. The shots in the cave, the lighting is good. I love the fact they've got different lighting setups. The set for Adrasta's Palace is fairly palatial. Of course, it's one level as all these things. You've got basically 2 or 3 major set scenes here. You've got the cave systems, which are well lit and work for the story. The candle lighting effect you get, I think it is mostly candle light, but there is elements where you can tell there's actually a torch in the Doctor's hand to make it look like it's a match being lit. They're interestingly filmed. There's a nice intercut between some Elstree films cave scenes early on into the studio stuff. It doesn't grate too much. It actually blends quite well, which is quite well done. You've got the Rebels set. It's just basically a tent with stuff in it either side. That's okay. And and then you've got the forest elements. I mean, Doctor Who's been very good with the forest elements in the time it does it, and this is probably the last great forest scenes that you see in Doctor Who. The ones that come after this are not ideally as well done in studio as the one in Elstree or in the studio as the one that's done here. The way the dry ice is there to make it kind of jungle atmosphere, it works very well. I think they've taken a lot of cues from the Mind of Evil's jungle set from a few years previous, and it does make a difference, and it looks very good. The elements of the fact that Aratu needs this kind of communication device where you put your hand on it and then he can take the larynx to speak is an interesting concept. I love the fact that the Doctor tries to communicate through different ways by telepathy, by speaking into a rather phallic looking protuberances that comes out of the creature. The whole idea of the Doctor still sussing things out by having that bit of comedy in there. I mentioned earlier on about the Douglas Adams book joke. This is another one of the book jokes where the Doctor's hanging from the pit and starts doing some mountaineering work to try and so he can climb down safely to the bottom of the pit. Doesn't work. Adrasta kind of kicks dirt in his face and he falls down, but the bit where he's doing it, he's looking at how to do mountaineering, and it's in Tibetan, so he gets a Tibetan book out, and that kind of joke, it's kind of an expansion of the one in Destiny of the Daleks, and that's kind of Douglas Adamsy element comes in. The Peter Rabbit stuff is very Douglas Adamsy at the beginning, with a discussion about Peter Rabbit, where the Doctor's reading Peter Rabbit, being read Peter Rabbit by K9, and Romana comes and spoils it. The whole overall feel with some of the scenes are quite good. It's quite a lovely little romp, but it's not the greatest of stories. I think David Fisher's writing here is a bit lackluster at times. The idea is nice, I like the idea, but it's kind of more standard Doctor Who fare, and it doesn't really stand up to what came before it in City of Death. But it isn't the worst of season 17. There is a worse story, which we'll come to when the time comes. So overall, I like the story. I think it's quite fun. It's slightly better than average. It's not quite take your brain out. There's enough there to keep you occupied throughout the whole thing. I think the interplay between the characters kind of lifts the script a little bit, which is a little bit weak in parts. Because of the scripting and because of the ideas and because it's very standard Doctor Who sci-fi at this point, I'm going to give it a rating of 3.5 TARDISes out of 5. So let's see how that sits in with the rest of the stories that we've reviewed so far in the Tom Baker era, and of course all the rest of the TV stories we've reviewed so far as well. So The Creature from the Pit sits in at 3.5 TARDISes out of 5, alongside David Fisher's last story, The Leisure Hive, Full Circle, State of Decay, The Sunmakers, and The Pirate Planet. At the bottom of the Tom Baker's era so far, with 3 TARDISes out of 5, is Warrior's Gate, The Rebus Operation, and The Stones of Blood. And at the top is still The Horror of Fang Rock, with 4 TARDISes out of 5. Overall, Time Lash and Sleep No More are still at the bottom with 2.5 TARDISes out of 5, and at the top are still 6 stories with 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. They are The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Caves of Androzani, The Tomb of the Cybermen, and Dalek. That's it for this review. Tell me what you think of The Creature of the Pit. Leave a comment down below. Do you like it? Leave a comment down below. Do you not like it? Leave a comment down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with the hashtag teamstructor. And if you like this channel as a whole, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. General rule, new video every Sunday at 4 PM GMT. The next video is on Wednesday at 6 PM GMT, and it is the Big Finish audio of Land of the Dead, and hopefully I'll be able to see you then. Until next time guys, I'll see you later.